I'm Edie Lush, and I'm here with Ian Bremmer. He's the president of Eurasia Group, and he's here with me in the Hub Pavilion in Davos. Thanks for coming along. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Tell me why you're here.
Well, I guess the most interesting point for me is what's happening to globalization. You know, over the last 40 years, the World Economic Forum has really been sort of a principal meeting place for people that are in favor of globalization. There's an agenda there, and it's a certain type of globalization. It's countries in the West, advanced industrial democracies, reaching out to the developing countries and bringing them closer, bringing their goods closer, bringing their labor closer, bringing their profit closer. And a lot of people benefited. Not everybody, but a lot of people did. But we're now in an environment where that's really changing. That kind of globalization is over, and the emerging markets are doing their own driving. It's a very interesting time to be at the World Economic Forum. And it's a bit of a crisis of an identity for the people that are attending here. So that's, I guess, the thing that I'm principally interested in exploring at Davos this year.
So Ian, you advise governments, businesses, hedge funds on political risk.
Yes.
Tell me where you see some of the big risks in the next year or so.
Well, the biggest risk in the next year is a structural one. It's what I would call the G0. I mean, there is a G20, of course, that people talk about, these countries, the emerging markets and developed states that are meeting together. But in terms of governance and leadership, that's really an aspirational concept. Analytically, where we are is a lack of governance. So, you know, climate change, you have Copenhagen, you have Cancun, and nothing's happening there. Trade, you have Doha, it's not going through. Currency, you have the Americans engaging in quantitative easing, the Chinese not moving their RMB. The Brazilians say we're entering a currency war. So from my perspective, the biggest risk globally is that this G0, this absence of governance, is going to create no willingness to move on public goods, and is going to lead to greater crises, cycles of greater crises, greater political conflict. This is a time that we need political leadership, but you have more countries in the mix, so it's hard to coordinate. They have different values, so they're less willing to coordinate. The countries that are most capable of coordination, the developed states, are doing the worst economically. The ones that are doing the best, the ones that are least able and capable of coordinating. And so it really creates an unstable global environment and a change, a new world order for the first time that we've seen really since Davos has been created.
So I want to talk about some of the specific problems that you might see. There's been a lot of discussion about Tunisia and whether the unrest there, the movement there, means that we might see similar movements perhaps in, say, Egypt.
Well, we are seeing similar movements in Egypt, and it's quite surprising to a lot of people. But I tell you, there's a big difference when you talk about social media, when you talk about Facebook, and you talk about the availability of information to all of these people. Authoritarian governments are vulnerable, but they're not equally vulnerable. A country like China has the money, the technology, and the wherewithal to actually monitor what people are doing. So they had problems with Google, but the government actually found some of what Google was doing very useful. All those Gmail accounts, dissidents were using them, and the Chinese government was actually monitoring what they were doing and using that to track down, crack some heads. In Tunisia, the government does not have the capacity, the wherewithal, the money, the technology to do the monitoring of these people, and they don't in Egypt either. And so as a consequence, it's really the globalization and the globalization of information is a one-way push, and it's destabilizing for a lot of these guys. It's not the case in a lot of other countries. And in the Gulf states, I really don't think you're going to have that kind of, I wouldn't call it contagion, that implies it's negative, but that kind of spillover, in part because their unemployment, they can import and export. It becomes an issue for Pakistan, for Bangladesh, for the Philippines. In the case of Egypt, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, those countries, the country is the country, the population is the population, and there are a lot of folks that are suffering.
Tell me a little bit about Pakistan as well, an area that I'm quite interested in. Can you tell me what you see there in terms of where we might be going, if we're going to see more worries about unrest there, about if we're going to see more contagion, if you like, coming through from Afghanistan?
Well, look at Iceland. You have a volcano, right? And then it ruins supply chain, costs enormous amounts of money, but the government actually was able to power through that relative stability. The floods in Pakistan, much less underlying political stability of the country, and it's teetering, the government is teetering on collapse. The military may well come in, bring in technocratic government. That infrastructure is not going to be repaired and created for decades. And the cotton production in Pakistan is way down. Their ability and willingness to actually shore up their borders is very low. And just a few weeks ago, we saw the violence that had been heretofore in the frontier provinces spread into the assassination of the governor of Punjab, which is the commercial center of Pakistan. Now look, you could have a failed state. The military is still very stable. The nukes aren't going to go in anybody else's hands. It's not going to be a war against India. But the ability of Pakistan to be a constructive player in the region and to help out in Afghanistan is effectively zero. And the Americans understand that. That's going to be difficult for Obama because he still has over 100,000 troops actually on the ground just south.
I'd like to keep you here all day, but I know you have to get off. Ian, thanks very much for stopping in here to the Hub Pavilion in Davos, and I'm Edie Lush.
My pleasure.